Alright, this is going to be an advanced tutorial on how to fold my floral cane. Here we have the crease pattern in the lower corner for what we're going to start with. This does not include the crane part of it. This just includes the center flower. I'm going to be editing that as we go. So right now what I have on the main screen, go ahead and start playing. Uh, I do highly recommend that book. That's not actually why I have it out right now, though. As you will see, it is just weighing down the paper. It's going to be annotating over. The video does not actually have any audio. I'm just talking over. All right, so there's our paper. I was flattening it because it was very curly. This paper here is tracing tissue, as I'm calling it. It's just a kind of like double tissue, but one layer is tracing paper instead of tissue paper. This is what we're going to be making. That's also tracing tissue. Made slightly differently with contact adhesive instead of PVA glue. This one's PVA glue and methyl cellulose to treat, and it came out a lot crisper, albeit a little wrinklier, but it'll work fine. So, just showing both sides. This is the white side, this side's less pretty. We're going to start by folding it in half. So, I'm going to pause this. I'm going to be editing the Origami thing to kind of go with. So what we're starting with is, let me just get rid of some of this here. Edit. Let's undo. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to start by just getting rid of this corner mess because this is the second layer. So we're going to start with essentially this CP minus all this. So if you're familiar with crease patterns, you can probably see where we're going with this. So I'm going to zoom into the center structure here. And what we want to do basically is we can kind of get rid of all this too to start with. And all that. Let's actually undo that a little. Took out a little too much. Just getting rid of the excess. Creases we don't want to see right now. So this is kind of what we're starting with. Except I think I have that backwards there, but that's okay. Let's just try folding it. I bet you I have it wrong. Yeah, I have it wrong. I have these going the wrong way. These need... because they reverse later, which is part of the confusing thing. Because we do a sync through, which you will see in a sec. So let's get the valleys going the right way. Whoop. Going all the way like such. So this should fold. It's detecting errors and flat foldability. Well, it's going to look kind of like that. It's not, yeah, I see this spot is wrong. I think these need a, these intersections are wrong, because especially right here, this shouldn't all be mountains. But that's okay. We'll get to it. So we're just trying to kind of get these creases in. Again, it's not going to all flat fold right. like that. But those are the creases we're going for. Essentially, what we're going to start with, and I'm just going to get rid of all this, is we need to start by making halves, like such. So what I'm going to start with is just with the colored side kind of face down. We are throwing a valley, a valley here, and a valley here. So I'm going to skip ahead a little because we don't need to see how to fold the paper in half. If you don't know how to fold the paper in half yet, this model is probably too advanced for you anyways. So we fold it in half each way. And now we need to fold the diagonals, but this time we want the diagonals to go the other way, so we're flipping the paper over. So essentially this. This, if we were to fold it, would give us a preliminary base. Granted, this is kind of the other side of the model. Eventually, we're going to want to focus it with basically colored sides up. So I'm just going to do this real quick because we're going to be flipping the whole thing over anyways. So these will eventually, in the finished model, be mountains. And these valleys, because we're going to actually be flipping it over. I'm going to jump ahead a little on the video again. Okay, so we've done that. Now with the color side up, so creases are going this way, I'm going to be putting a valley in, so we're going to make the grid a little smaller. In like this. Like this. Like this. And like this. And for now, we can kind of ignore the diagonals. They're not really playing a big role. And I'm going to jump ahead a little. Again, we're just making a 4x4 grid. So now what we're doing is we're just narrowing out the center of the 4x4 grid and 2/8. Actually, I think we've already done that at this point in the video. But yes, we're just going to narrow out into eighths. And the eighths, like that. So you can see we've made the eighths there. So to make the eighths, you're just going to pleat, and that'll make this red. So now along the eighths, we've just kind of gone like this. Like this. At this point too, we can start to ignore the middle creases. They're there, but we're not really using them at this point in time. So that's what we're trying to get to. And that's where we are. If you look at the Origami window, that's where we are. Now we're going to fold into 16ths. And for time's sake, I'm just going to kind of be jumping through here. So the 16ths, we're actually going to want them, if this is the colored side up, because I'm going to have to reverse it on mine. Yeah, we want these to be valleys. So these will become valleys. And we're just dividing in half again like that. We are going to need to do this one more time to make 30 seconds in the center of the paper. So I'm going to shrink it even more. I'm going to embolden those lines. It's a little easier to see. But we now want 30 seconds. So I'm going to take a mountain here. And this will be the next step. Again, none of this will flat fold yet. These are just the creases we're making throughout. So skip ahead just a little. So what we are doing now is just reversing those 30 seconds because on the video I hadn't put them in the right direction. Or rather the 16ths weren't in the right way, so I got to reverse them to get the 30 seconds in the right way. There we go. So this is with the colored side down. You can see them falling in those 30 seconds. Just kind of checking it, showing that you're folding in half the 16ths into 30 seconds. And we're going to fold these and kind of unfold them. Just going to get rid of some of the excess lines that we really don't care about for the time being, because we're not really going to use these creases. Okay. While that video goes and I'm folding, I'm just getting rid of these excess creases. So now we're here. And eventually we're going to want to kind of make some mountains going like this. But we're going to want to extend them a little past. Like that. I got that little. Get rid of that. There we go. So kind of like that is what we're going to be going for. So that's the center structure that we're going to want. We'll be getting rid of these. So those creases will not be used. So like that. Just going to clean up some of it. What I'm showing now is how we're going to find where to put these creases. So what we're going to do is we're just going to make a little pinch fold by mountain folding kind of that, but we're not going to do the whole thing. We're just going to kind of pinch. So we're making a pinch halfway through, like that. Kind of like such. Along the paper. And then we're making halfway between that and that. So if you were to go here, zoom in on this corner, we are taking half the distance, so 4, 4, increasing kind of like that. So we're just making little pinches kind of along there, like such. We're going to do that all around. And what that does is it tells us where to put our creases. So to make the innermost square of this, so not that, to make that innermost square, you're going to fold that corner here to this pre-crease here. That'll get you the innermost square. And then to get the outermost square, you fold to the kind of half of that square. And that's what you're seeing me do here. Clean up the model a little. The CP. Right, these become valleys when you do the collapse. I think that's what's throwing the CP off on flat foldability. And then I'm just kind of drawing out on the paper what you see here. Those creases. So I'm going to skip forward a little. You don't need to see me draw everything. I started drawing the valleys and mountains and I just got lazy and just drew all the lines straight, but you get the general sense of what we're trying to fold. And then we're going to have to make this collapse. And then to make this collapse, I usually start with the pleats on the outside and work my way to the center of the collapse. So what we are doing is we're starting by creating these outer pleats and just working our way to the center. Once we get closer to the center on all four sides, we are going, as you see, it starts to kind of want to collapse, but not always the way we want it to. So this littler collapse I find to be harder just because the creases are so small. Keep in mind, this one I'm starting with 10-inch paper. I've done it out of 6-inch kami before. It's a little intense to do it out of 6-inch kami, and it's very prone to tear toward the end. It just gets very densely packed, and it won't look as good either. I highly recommend double tissue or any sort of nicer origami paper for this that's thin and kind of strong. There's just a lot of folds going on. You want to have a relatively good tensile strength so that when you're making kind of the neck and the tail, it doesn't just tear when you attempt that reverse fold later. So here I'm just kind of showing I'm sharpening the creases in that center square to make it nice and sharp. Oh, where did detected areas and flat foldability. Okay, fine. I would have to go over this heavily to see where all the issues are, but it's gonna look kind of like this. But anyways, this is kind of what we're going for. Sure, I have some valleys going the wrong way. Shoot, look at this. Yeah, those are mountains. Oh, I see. There's actually a crease right there. That's what I'm missing. Okay. So these are mountains, but there's a valley fold I omitted. We'll fix that a little. Whoop. Well, that goes. And you're going to want to, as you see, when you get kind of where I'm at on the video, you're going to want to start flipping it over and checking the underside. Make sure it's good. Yes, there's a valley here. That's what I omitted. Knew I was omitting something. Something looked wrong. That's what we're looking for. And, oh, yep. So we're going to have that when we're done. So that's the CP folded. And that's what we're trying to get to. You can see it starting to take shape. I'm going to skip a little ahead. Flip this over so you can kind of see what the other side's going to look like. It'll look kind of like this. There will be like little flaps in the center. Yep. So that's what both sides will look like when you're done. See? And there you can see the underside right there in the video. I'm just going to kind of smooth out that corner where it's a little crumpled. My folding tool. So the next step is we have essentially, let me clear the CPs. So this point right here on all four sides, it's currently going underneath the model. And we're going to want to sink it out onto the other side of the model. Right now I'm just kind of erasing the pencil marks. So I am going to increase the grid again. What we want to do first, before we get to that sink though, is we are going to take the center square, the top right there, and we're going to do essentially a windmill kind of fold, but we're not going to do it all the way. So we're going to take these mountains here, and I do this with my folding tool here in advance. I just gently emboss the paper. You can use an embossing tool or a folding tool here. It's not necessary, but it does help the crease kind of go in neater. So I'm just gently scoring the paper, but not really cutting. I'm just kind of pressing down to make like the start of a fold, if you will, embossing. So now I'm just taking that corner right here and I'm bringing it to the center. Like such. And then on each of these corners, there will essentially be a preliminary fold going in. As you can see. So we will have a mountain coming up there, a mountain coming up there, there, and there. Kind of like that. Actually, what we have here is not that yet. So we folded that corner in. Kind of like such. So that's what we have there on our model. But we also need is to do the preliminary, complete the squash fold. So we're going to be opening it up. And squashing that down like such. And there we go. We have completed the squash fold. There will also be a bunch of creases kind of going through because we did it through multiple layers. So now what we have, what I'm showing you is this over here, this back here. So I gotta kind of mirror this out. Remember, we were doing it through multiple layers. Whoop. But anyways, that's what we have. So what I'm doing now is I'm going to basically taking these points over here. See if I can just do a selection tool. Yeah, so we're going to take these points there, 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 and there. And what we want to do is we're going to sink them in essentially right to here. So I'm going to zoom in on this a few times, trying to get the camera to focus. But we've done it once. You see I sunk that flap in the other way. But when we did that, let me go back a little. It's important to note, I'm going to pause it here. When this point kind of goes into where I'm kind of pointing with the folding tool, when we sink these points over to here, what we want to do is we want that sink to go underneath the flaps that we preliminary folded. So I'm going to select again. So we have a set of corner flaps here, essentially. These little corners. Right, where we did the preliminary sink, there's a set of corners. And we want, when we tuck this corner up to here, right, we don't want that flap to go over top those corners. We want them tucked underneath, and you'll see what I mean here. There's an order to the flaps. If you tuck it over, we will eventually get them like that, but it'll make it very hard to open up the flower in the model. And once you start making the crane and you get to the point where you want to open up the flower, if you do this in the other way, the flower will essentially be locked shut. It'll be very hard to get it open, and you're going to be much more likely to tear it. So it's kind of hard to see because I'm kind of off camera, unfortunately. But hopefully I bring it back in. Skip ahead. It's hard to see. Okay. I'm just showing you what kind of the petals we're making right now are. Let's skip past that. That might have been a better one to see because you're going to repeat this on all four sides. So there you can see it's kind of tucked underneath the flaps. Let's see if this one shows any better. At this point, I'm not really concerned about showing it. Fortunately, the first time it wasn't. There we go. Come on. Oh well. That's what we're doing is we're just taking those corners and we're sinking. I might need to get a better video later of how to do that. Once you've sunk all the corners, another way to tell if you've locked it or not. Let's see where we're at right now. Looks like we still have one more corner to do. Yeah, one good way to tell if it's locked or not is you will be able, so now I'm just actually going to flatten it. You'll be able to take these pleats along the middle and fold them over. If you locked it, they won't want to fold over all the way neatly. If you didn't lock it, then they'll fold over neatly, and you'll see that here. So right now I'm just trying to get this as flat as possible with the creases as neat as possible. This is where we should be. And see here, I can fold that fully over. That is because this corner, that sink that I did, where it meets right in the center, right, isn't affected. And this step is optional, the one I'm doing now. So what I am doing now, I do recommend you do it, but you don't really have to, is I am taking these pleats here and I am locking them with a valley fold. Just tucking it up underneath. And right now I'm just erasing some of the pencil marks from before. So just like that, just kind of locking those edges. At this point, because there's a lot of thick layers of paper in the center, you might notice that the paper will start to bow a little. Like it won't want to lay flat. It'll kind of balloon up toward you. That is fine. Once you get a few more creases in, it'll kind of stop doing that to a degree. Because it'll help lock it all in place. But just kind of let it balloon. It's better to let it kind of bow up toward you than risk tearing where you locked the paper at those little corners. Not corners, edges, I guess. So I'm going to skip ahead because we're just locking it and flattening. You can see here how it wants to bow and how you might accidentally tear while flattening. I want to go down. So if you look at the crease pattern, I'm just going to undo all the hat in the middle. I'm going to leave it kind of like that. Just remember there's a lot more creases now going around in that middle section. But if you remembered before, we had some valleys. As to find the 30 seconds, we had to make these creases. So we're going to look for the creases I just drew. And I'm highlighting them right now with my folding tool on the video. And what we're going to do is we're going to take these creases and we're going to fold them, pleat it to the center of the model. There. Which, if you were to look at the crease pattern, it would look a little like such. So that's the crease we're making. But all the way through. And you will notice we're kind of getting to a similar setup here. For the collapse we did in the center. So essentially what we're doing is we're going to be repeating that collapse. So if you look kind of toward the center here, we're going to do this crease pattern, but sort of over top what we already folded. So if I were to, refold, you, we are making this collapse again over top. So I'm just going to zoom out a little. So we're making that collapse again, and you see we're going to start creasing. So this collapse, but just sort of over top what we already did. So if you remember the steps we went through to make the center as it is now, we're repeating that, but with these blue creases being on what was essentially the fourth crease line. We're not going to refold force because we want it to actually be a little smaller. And how it's becoming a little smaller is because we have these pleats kind of taking some of the paper out, kind of changing where those force line up. And that's what we're doing right now. So now you can see what I'm drawing here is essentially, I'm just going to do auxiliary lines. It's essentially that. So I am highlighting those lines. So that's what I'm doing with the pencil, is I'm just highlighting those fourth lines. And I'm telling you basically where to put your creases. Here. So essentially what we're doing shoot this right. Yeah. Yep. Okay. Anyways, so that's what we're doing. Is we're making this crease pattern over top, essentially, the folded version of the crease pattern. And here you can kind of see the same collapse right here, we are repeating this collapse, essentially. So again, we start by walking those pleats from the outside in, like such. And we're just popping all the creases to go the right way. This will be a little easier than you did it actually on the really small square, in part just because it's larger. So it's easier to kind of know what you're doing. Actually, I think you'll be able to kind of see what I meant when I was talking about that sink earlier. The reversing of those points should become a little clearer. So we just have one more corner to kind of get going the right way. Skip through this a bit. This is just a repeat of what we just did. And now you can kind of see it kind of falling together. We're just going to let it all fall in. And we're going to flatten it. And now what we're going to do is basically repeat that 4 preliminary folds along the center. What I'm doing right now is just making sure where we had the pleats from before, making sure they're all neatly tucked in and I have nice, neat square corners. Because those pleats can easily pop out. So we're going to repeat that preliminary base or preliminary fold on all 4 corners that we did before. You can kind of see it coming together. So here we're going to repeat this little sink maneuver to get the outer petals. We want to get them going out from underneath. So we're just popping these corners out. And again, we want them tucked underneath those flaps, those corners that I'm highlighting right now. You want them kind of up underneath that corner. So you want to make sure those corners stay up. Probably put a timestamp here. This is the same maneuver. And we're going to repeat this. And we're going to repeat that on all 4 sides, working our way around the model. You can kind of see the order of the layers that we want. That's what we want. Okay. And once we've repeated all that on all 4 sides, we're going to repeat that lock maneuver. I'm just showing you what it looks like from underneath. So I'm going to be opening. So essentially what we've done now is this. Minus the locks on the edges. So this is where we've gotten to. And you'll kind of notice the folded model looks like what we have, as you can see. Move it further over. So what we're doing now is we are just kind of folding these edges like such, as you can see. And of course the underside will look kind of like that. So we've gotten to this point of the CP. And I'm just adding some locks to the edges. which will help it kind of stay together while we do our next set of folds. Move that over and this over. And that's what we're going for. So that's kind of what we've gotten, minus, of course, the edge locks. So now I'm smoothing it out and flattening it. I'm also trying to find kind of the inner bit. So what I mean by that is if you look at the underside, there is this large square. This large square has a lot of layers, kind of, on it. That large kind of square underneath. Not the little square, but the large square. And that's what I'm trying to find the edge of, that you can see there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to make the uh, big preliminary base that'll start our crane. And to do this, I'm just going to I'm going to pretend this is what we have. We're just going to pretend this is a square. So I'm going to erase all that. And with auxiliary lines, I'm going to draw over what we have. So we essentially have that. Whoop, if I can. Come on. There we go. We got our little square. Got our larger square. And that's kind of the underside, and you can see what we're doing in the video. Is that larger square we're not folding into the preliminary base. So what we're doing is we are mountain folding this, kind of like such. And then we're putting valleys along the middle. And again, it won't lay flat at this point in time. So like such. And then this is kind of becoming a mountain. Come on. I might zoom in a bit more. It's not snapping. There we go. And that's becoming a mountain. So now we are starting our petal folds. Again, we cannot let it lay flat yet. So we have a mountain kind of coming like such. Just going to guesstimate. This probably isn't a mathematically perfect, but that's okay. We're basically bisecting this angle. Just trying to get as roughly close as possible. I just realized those aren't going right. And we're working our way around, just making these creases as we go. So that's what we're trying to get to. And what you'll see here is it won't really lay flat at this point in time. The main thing is we want to make sure that we select this edge meets that edge. 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 These edges meet those. And we're just lining it up till we get a nice point in the center. Just like that. And that's what we're trying to line up. Eventually these kind of go away. And we start to get our bird base kind of falling into place. Whoop. So that's what we're trying to do. And now we're going to close it up as best we can. At this point in time, once we get it here, and we fold it up on the flaps. So the next step, we want to take on two ends, we're going to fold up the flaps for the wings. Kind of like that. And like that. And that's what I'm showing here. We're just going to take two opposing edges and fold the flaps up. And actually what we have right now, this is what the underside would look like. So it's actually kind of looking more like this. So we're looking at it now from the top. Essentially, this is what we've done. It's kind of what we have going on here. Just actually draw those little auxiliary lines in. Just to kind of demonstrate what the top is looking like better. That's kind of what we have going on. There, at the top, square. What I'm doing now is just kind of taking the two legs. So, in selection, I don't want to delete. So we're taking these two corners, and we're rabbit earing them over underneath the model as far as we can. And what this is going to do, bring it back into the picture a little. There we go. So what this is going to do, there. So you can kind of see we've rabbit eared it over, flattening along the base as best we can. And this allows us to thin out the legs and the tail a bit better. So you can see. Now they won't, traditionally in a crane, when you thin out the legs and the tail, you are exactly bisecting that angle. So let me select again. Between, whoop, undo. Between this and this, you bisect that angle. On this model, because of how thick the center is, if we were to truly bisect it, it would be pushing kind of through that corner just a little. So what we want to do is we're actually going to go only to there. And because of the thickness of the paper, it won't exactly bisect, but it'll go pretty freaking close. As you can see there, it doesn't quite. I mean, if the paper was infinitely thin, you could bisect it. But the problem is it's not. What I would recommend doing here at this point is if you folded, these bisectors through, go ahead and unfold them at this stage. It'll make it a lot easier to open up your lotus. But essentially what we're going to do now is we're going to start shaping the lotus flower. And to do this, we need to open it up. So you remember those points we sunk? Sorry, now that's what I'm doing is I'm opening it up a little more. So if you remember those points we sunk earlier, you can zoom out, where we had those flaps we were trying to get them under, we're actually going to move those flaps over and free those points. So if you look, there's those little flaps in there locking down an outer petal, the outer petal that we sunk out earlier. So what we have to do is we need to take, I'm going to pause. Yeah, go back a little. So if you see that flap was stuck, essentially, underneath those corners, and we freed it. So we gotta do that on all four sides. So to do that, you're gonna take those little things I'm rubbing along the folding tool, those little corners. So you gotta get it in between those sets of pleats, just like that. And we're gonna repeat that on all four corners, shaping and smoothing the folds. Because you see I have a little wrinkle there, and you can kind of smooth that wrinkle out by tucking the paper better back underneath. But that's what we're going for, is we're trying to free out all those outer petals on all four sides. Skip forward a little. And now we have freed all the petals. There. So all the petals are free. Now you just want to shape them by curling the petals. So again, to free the petals, you are essentially rearranging the layers of the paper inside the flower, and then slipping your folding tool kind of up underneath, and then getting underneath that outer petal, and then shifting it so that it's in between the layers instead of locked underneath. So here I'm just shaping enough. Now, if you look inside, there's going to be another set of petals that we can peel out a bit more. So skip ahead a little. And that's what we're doing now, is we're taking our folding tool and we're just going to peel back those innermost petals. They're not locked under anything, so this is pretty easy. And this is going to open up. So if we go back a little to the original crease pattern of the two flowers, we are essentially now at this. this center flower. So we have basically shaped the outer flower around the crane. We've opened up it enough that we can now see this initial collapse. And what we're going to do is we're going to repeat those steps where we shape the outer flower, and we're going to do that to the inner part of the flower to get the inner petals going. So we're going to start by opening up, get in select tool. We're going to open up these sets of preliminary folds and petal fold them out. Then these sinks need to be freed out from underneath those corners there. And once we freed all 4 of these sinks, we can then start shaping the inner portion of the flower. Unfortunately, it's just not zoomed in. Fortunately, I was not doing it on the camera. It's really difficult. I don't have a lot of places to fold. To be able to see these fine details, I kind of had to move it closer to my face, and unfortunately, that took it out of field of view of the camera quite a bit. But anyways, that's what we're doing. Skip ahead, because a lot of what I'm doing now is shaping. Oh, that's as big as it goes. So the next step is we got to get the neck and tail reverse folded. I think I showed for a little bit there. Okay, so what I'm doing now is I've shaped the flower and I'm re-thinning out the neck and tail portions. Like that. So you see I've thinned it out. I feel like I cropped it smaller when I edited. Oh well. So there, I'm just refolding over the flaps that thin out the neck and the tail. And now, very carefully, what you're going to do is make those 2 reverse folds. I really wish it was in camera at one point. Yeah, and to make these folds, it helps just to kind of open it up. You can start the reverse fold kind of underneath where it needs to be and start walking the reverse fold up. And what I'm doing right now is just walking the reverse fold up. See, I'm just stretching it and kind of very carefully, not the tear at the center of the model, kind of working that reverse fold further and further up. You want to start the reverse fold as close as you can to where it's going to be, but inevitably it won't work that way. Because you can't lay the model flat. You're going to have to kind of walk that reverse fold up. So here I'm just stretching out the model, trying to get it as kind of triangular as possible. So if I pause this real quick on the Ori editor, I'm just going to draw some auxiliary lines. So what we have, I'm going to draw the profile. Whoop. Is we have a wing, auxiliary. We got a wing. We got the tail we're trying to do, and we got that other portion of the wing like that, right? And we have a center crease kind of behind like that. And what we're trying to do is reverse fold like this, bringing that up. However, getting that reverse fold all the way up in there won't be easy, especially if, you know, you have it like this. If that makes sense. Because you're not going to be able to reverse fold up in here without tearing. If that's like that, you need, ideally, if you were to do that reverse fold, you would want the model to look like that, right? And then you would do the reverse fold like such, where the wings weren't angled. Unfortunately, with this model, because there's so much paper and stuff going on with the flower in the center, you can't do that. So instead, what you have to do is you start with that, right? And what we want to do is, with all the flower layers kind of going on here, we want to very carefully bring this up that way, that up that way, and this kind of out to meet. And what we're going to get is essentially back here. The best we can do is kind of have this be a slightly wider angle. And then that will kind of, the wings will kind of come out like that. And from here, it's easier then to start a reverse fold. Maybe not all the way up as far as it needs to go. But you can kind of do the reverse fold like such. And then once you started that reverse fold, you can walk these creases. Walk those creases. I can draw. You're going to walk those creases up to as high up as you can get it next to the wings. And that's what we're doing. We're starting a reverse fold there. We have pitched the wings up as high as we can pitch them without messing up, all the flowery paper layers that we shaped. And we're just trying to get both those reverse folds made. Once we've done all that, all we have to do then is reverse fold the head. And then we're pretty much done at this point. We have the flower. We just want to reshape any petals we smushed. And there's just one last step. And that step is we want the center of the flower to pop up a bit more so we can kind of appreciate those inner petals without them being so hidden into the model. And to do this, we're going to flip the model over, and with our folding tool or the not pointy end of like a skewer or whatever, we're just going to push the center of the model up along those creases, kind of pinching where I'm showing in the process. So we're kind of cutting up from underneath. Oop, let me hide all this. Wrong one. Fortunate, there we go. So reshaping that. So we're reshaping our flower. We're just going to come up underneath. You see we've kind of pushed that up. It kind of makes it pop a bit better. And now you can see it kind of exaggerates that center there a bit better. Just like such. And that's what we have. I'm going to be showing a few other ones I made. There was one I made with Kami. Let's see if it's in this. So that's another one I made with tracing tissue. That was a little sloppier. Wasn't quite as neat. There's the Kami one. That is 6-inch Kami. And there you have it.